Hello everybody, welcome to yet another video. What I've got going on today is something a little different than what I've done previously, and no, it's not a digital drawing. What I'm going to be doing instead is this past Sunday, my husband and I went to the Biltmore because we've got season passes. Shout out to my mother-in-law for getting those for us. But while we were there, they have the most absolute beautiful gardens and conservatory. And so I took just a few snaps of a few things, mainly florals that really caught my eye. And I kind of want to play around with them. They also, the Biltmore has a really nice winery there, and if you are of the legal drinking age, you can do a complimentary wine tasting. And so I kind of wanted to get a picture of a group of grapes. It's kind of fun to say. A bunch, I guess it's called a bunch of grapes. And so kind of using these just as my inspiration. I'm gonna play around with this. I'm gonna use a medium of markers. I haven't used my markers in a hot minute, and it might be a little interesting to kind of get the texture out of that, but I'm excited to kind of see what happens. Kind of like the color variety that I've got. I mean, obviously I've got the really strong green of the grapes, and I might put hints of purple in them just for some of the shading. But then I have this really vibrant yellow and the very vibrant orange and pink. I think this might be one of my favorite flowers out of the photos that I've got. And then I have this really beautiful purple, and this one I find fascinating just because the flowering is so vastly different. Because you have this traditional, like, larger petals with the light purple, but then once those get to a particular point of flowering, they then produce this darker, more bundled petals that are really pretty and very unique in my opinion. And they're a dangling type of flower. You know, very pretty. So, come along with me as I kind of play around and use markers that I haven't used in a hot minute. The markers I'm going to be using are Arteza markers. They were gifted to me for a Christmas gift a couple years ago. They are alcohol based, so they blend very nicely. I already have them swatched out here, so that's kind of nice. I can quite literally just kind of look and know exactly what color I want to grab. And then all of the colors are labeled on the top. Let's see if I can get that to focus. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Possibly, maybe not. There you go. That may have been really loud. I was right up to the microphone. I'm so sorry. But I've got a wide variety there. And so my plan is to kind of, for each flower, try to choose at least 3 colors to use as my highlights, my midtones, and then my shadows. I might play around with some contrasting, we might see. So I might kind of mess around with some possibilities in my sketchbook first for color theory. So come along, let's see what we can do with this. Okay, and we've got first attempts at these flowers. Now, I'll tell you, when I first started with each of the pieces, I was very doubtful that they were going to turn out the way that I wanted them to, and I would be lying if I didn't feel that with each one. But something I think I learned out of all of this was that an art piece isn't finished until it's finished, which sounds like such a stupid statement, but when I first laid out the highlight color, because I was building going from my lighter shades to my darker, what I found out was when I first laid down the first layer of colors, I always was super doubtful of my placement, doubtful of the color choices, doubtful of seeing the vision of where it was going. And I consistently had to remind myself to trust the process, to take it one step at a time. And I was speaking with a family member this past weekend, and I was just trying to remind myself the same words I kept telling them, was that with art, you constantly need to remind yourself to make the next best step, because oftentimes we have such an idealized image in our head, and then rendering it, we sometimes don't render it the exact way we imagine it. And typically that's because, at least for me, I don't always imagine the exact details. I have a general idea or a general feeling for the piece, and then when I start to actually do it, because I don't have the exact details broken down, it doesn't always turn out to match my expectations, and I can get very discouraged. So the advice that I told this family member was, when you're doing any form of art, you're going to have moments where you doubt it, where you think it doesn't look good, and it's failing what you originally had in mind. And my advice was to push through, but push through with going, okay, this is what the piece is right now. What is something that I can do that's going to make the piece just a little bit better? And keep doing that until you end up with a piece that you like and that you're happy with. And for me, something that I figured out is that kind of helps me find the joy in the process of actually doing the art and really enjoy the pieces that come out of it. Even for this flower that I told you on the beginning was my favorite and still is. I think I made some decisions that kind of messed it up. Putting the really kind of, not the absolute darkest color, but the second to darkest color straight in the middle kind of limited me on my highlights. And I just had to keep going with it. And I had to really layer in my darker colors to help build that contrast and the shadows. But I didn't let it overwhelm me. And by the end of it, I actually really still enjoyed the piece. So I think that's something that's a little bit of an advice that I'd like to share with all of y'all. You know, if you ever have that moment when you're doing your art and you're super frustrated because it's not turning out the way you like, be reminded that sometimes it's the journey that's more important than the destination, which again, another cheesy phrase, but it is so true and so very important. So let that kind of be your encouragement for the week for any pieces. And I know I'm releasing this on 4th of July, so I hope that you all have a fantastic week and are able to celebrate with your family and loved ones. Thank you guys so much for joining me for once again another video, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.